Who don't remember, we are in Proverbs chapter 16, if I remember right. I've had to start marking it in my Bible because I get lost. Proverbs chapter 16, actually verse 16. So Proverbs 16:16 is where we will start. So from 16 through 30, we have a section here, which is a lot about wise and foolish speech. Got kind of an introduction for the first couple of verses. Then from 20 to 24, we talk about good speech. And then 26 to the end is about destructive speech. So it's all about speech. So we'll start at verse 16. It says, how much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. And we've seen this kind of verse before. We saw it, let me just see, chapter 3, verse 14. It says, for her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, her gains than fine gold. Chapter 8, verse 10 says, receive my instruction and not silver, and knowledge rather than gold. I mean, again, this is the introductory paragraph. He's just saying, hey, listen, we're about to talk more about wisdom, recognize how important it is, how much better, how incredibly inconceivable anything else would be to be better than wisdom. So verse 17 says, the highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He who keeps his way preserves his soul. The highway or the smooth way, the prepared way of the upright. I think what this is saying to me, if you want to stay on the highway, if you want to stay on the smooth way, if you want to stay on the prepared way, then depart from evil. I mean, it's a pretty simple statement. Depart from evil, keep away from evil, and you will stay on the wise way, the highway, the smooth way. Stay in the highway and you'll preserve your soul. Verse 18, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. You know, pride and haughty, right? Destruction and fall. We've seen this, again, this is not new information to us. Chapter 15, verse 33, where it says, the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility, right? It's the opposite of this. Humility is where you get honor, not pride. Pride goes before destruction. I will ask this question. Why do you think there's so much emphasis on pride and haughtiness in Proverbs? I know it's early in the class. Some of you are not yet awake, but why do you think so much emphasis on pride and haughtiness in Proverbs?
So I've always thought that is the basis of all of our sin. Pride. Yeah. It's what I want.
I think that's excellent, CT. I think you're dead on there. Any other thoughts? That's good.
Pride and selfishness, focus on self rather than focus on God.
Yeah. And, you know, again, it always brings me back to Matthew chapter 5, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. It's the first thing, right? The humility is the first thing in order to get on the right path. And so I think that's why he keeps saying it. And the other reason I would say is because obviously we got a real problem with it, right? This is a big issue that we struggle with, you know, getting ourselves out of the way. So, yeah, he continues to beat us over the head about pride. So, all right, verse 19. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud, right? Same thing again, same message. It's about humility. It's not about being prideful and divide the spoil with the proud. It takes us back to earlier chapters when he talked about getting into wickedness and robbing other people and then sharing that spoil with them. So same message. Verse 20. All right, we started in a different little section here. In verse 20, it says, he who heeds the word wisely will find good, and whoever trusts in the Lord, happy is he. He who heeds the word wisely, he who follows the principles, he who listens to what I'm saying, right, will find good. And another, do you have any other translations for the word good?
Prosperous.
Blessed.
Prosperous? Somebody else have something?
Blessed.
Blessed. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, successful is another one. He's saying if you want to be successful, if you want to be prosperous, if you want to be blessed, heed the word, heed the principles, listen to what I'm saying. And then he goes on really in the next couple of verses to kind of define what he means by that. What does he mean by success? What does he mean by finding the good? And the first one is right in the next verse, right? Whoever trusts in the Lord, happy is he. So the first thing is happiness. First thing about success, first thing about the good is that it brings happiness. It is interesting that if you make the parallel between the first and second part of verse 20, right? He heeds the word and whoever trusts in the Lord. So, he is saying, if you trust in the Lord, you heed the word. If you heed the word, you're trusting in the Lord. Those two things are the same. All right, the next in verse 21, the wise in heart will be called prudent, or the wise in heart will be called insightful. So this is the second thing. If you heed the word, if you follow the principles, first, you're going to be happy. Second, people are going to look at you and go, gee, that guy's got something to say. That person has something that's useful. He's insightful. She sees things that others don't see. And then in the second half of verse 21, the sweetness of his lips increases learning. The wisdom, the sweetness of his lips increases learning. So this is one of those verses where I've gone back and forth in translation. I'm trying to remember where I ended up. The sweetness of his lips increases learning. Yeah, the sweetness of his lips, the learning, the wisdom is in other places is called honey, right? And it's saying that the wisdom, the taste of that wisdom increases learning. I learn more because I love it, right? So if you heed the word, you get successful, and successful means that you're happy. It means that people see that you're insightful, and it also means that you learn, right? You gain insight. You continue to learn. It's sweet to you. It's sweet to you. You love learning. Verse 22, understanding is a wellspring of life to him who has it. So now it's not only are you happy, not only people see you as insightful, not only do you increase in learning, you bring life to others. Understanding is a wellspring of life to him who has it. It's a wellspring that flows out of you to other people. Right? We saw similar verses to this before. Let me just see if I can find them. Chapter 10, verse 11. It says, the mouth of the righteous is a well of life. Right? The mouth of the righteous is a well of life. So again, this idea that out of you, right? You're seen, not only you're seen as insightful, you utilize that to bring life to others. He adds the counter to that at the end of verse 22, but the correction of fools is folly, right? As we've talked about before, the correction of fools is a waste of time. And then verse 23, again, these are connected, that the heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds learning to his lips. So I love this one because what it's saying is, if you heed the words, right, if you follow the principles, then your heart will actually teach your mouth. Your heart will teach you what to say, will teach you how to speak, will teach you how to bring wisdom forth so that it is life to others, so that people do see you as insightful. But it's your heart, right? It comes out of your heart, where, of course, the Holy Spirit is. It's the heart of the wise that teaches the mouth. It's not your brain that teaches your mouth. It's not your experiences that teach your mouth. It's your heart. It's the stuff that comes from the Lord. It's that come from the Spirit. And then verse 24, pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the bones. So again, these pleasant words that come from the heart, right? These pleasant words that come from this understanding that's a wellspring of life, right? They're like a honeycomb to others now. It's sweetness to the soul and health to the bones of others. It brings health to other people. It brings life to other people. I'll just put it as an aside here that at Patty's sister's funeral, there was a good friend of hers that got up and spoke about Pam and just told about her life, and it was just beautiful. It was, it was more than even pleasant, and it gave us all kind of an appreciation of who Pam was and what kind of person she was, and it certainly, as this verse says, it brings health to the bones, right? It brings a sense of comfort in those kinds of times. And so to me, it was a great example of this phrase, right? Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the bones. She had a particular skill at really speaking and providing those words, and again, all of this is, as it says here, it comes from the heart, it teaches the mouth, becomes pleasant words, which are then sweetness to the soul and health to others' bones, helps to others who are in the midst of whatever they're in the midst of. All right, the other thing I just want to pause and kind of say as an aside here, when it talks about this person, the person who heeds the word, who is successful, who is happy, who is insightful, who learns, who brings life to others, who teaches himself. I just wanted to say he's talking about you guys. He's talking about elite Christians. I don't know another word to say, but you need to recognize that he's talking here about you. He's talking here about you who have learned, you who have followed the principles, you who have who are teaching others, you who are giving, others are looking at and saying, hey, he's got something to say. And I would just encourage you to act on your eliteness, right? Act on what you have learned and what you have, what God has instilled in you to be the Green Beret Christians that you are. You are an unusual, amazing group of people that know so much more than most people and even most Christians. You're elite. I just want to get that in your head that you're so unusual, and God therefore expects you to act like Green Beret Christians and bring that word and be the wellspring of life to others. Okay. Verse 25, we get a little turn here. There could be a little however at the beginning of verse 25. It says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but the end of its way is death. We've seen the same phrase back in chapter 14, verse 12, right? But the idea is that, there's a way that seems right to a man, that things that he does, he thinks he's doing well, but actually he's not. And if you connect this to verse 26, it says, the person who labors for himself, for his hungry mouth drives him on, right? In other words, the person who is only worried about himself and only worried about his hungry mouth, right? He thinks that his way is right, but the end of that way is death. The end of that way is eternal punishment. If you're only worried about yourself, and this is why I think 20 through 24, it's focusing on getting that word out. The way that you are helping other people, the way that you're bringing them, the way that you are a wellspring of life. If you're not a wellspring of life, you're worried only about yourself and your hungry mouth, and that drives you on. And he says that is the way that seems right to you. The end of that way is death. Verse 27, an ungodly man digs up evil, and it is on his lips like a burning fire. We kind of have a progression here. It's his discussion now about this way that seems right. The first thing it says, he's an ungodly man who digs up evil. It's on his lips like a burning fire, right? He fabricates things. He lies, he brings forth evil speech about others, and it becomes a burning fire to them, right? That's the first step is this ungodly man. He's making up stories about others, and it becomes a burning fire to them. And then verse 28, a perverse man sows strife, and a whisperer separates the best of friends, right? He sows strife between others. He's perverse. He's trying to separate the best of friends, trying to separate people from one another, trying to bring discord. And then finally, you get to verse 29, a violent man entices his neighbor and leads him in a way that is not good, right? So first you have the first man is digging up evil. The second one is sowing strife between brothers. And now you get to violence. And not only is it violence that the man is doing, it's violence that he is enticing others to be a part of, right? The violence entices his neighbor and leads him in a way that is not good. And then you remember verse 30, it says, he winks his eye to devise perverse things. He purses his lips and brings about evil. You'll remember back in earlier chapters, well, first of all, back in chapter 4, there was this warning against following the wicked man, which is this, the warning against this violent man. But then in chapter 6, there was a description of that man, and it says that he winks his eye and he shuffles his feet. We said at the time that this was somebody he's telling you one thing, but the truth is something else, right? He's winking his eye at his comrades while he's telling you something that's just a lie. He winks his eye to devise perverse things. He purses his lips and brings about evil. He's telling you an untruth, but he's trying to get you involved in that. So again, brings us back to chapter 4, which says, stay away from these people. All right. Verse 31. Yeah, we got plenty of time. Go ahead.
One of my favorite verses.
Verse 31 through actually chapter 7, verse 6 is one section.
17.
What?
17.
What did I say?
7.
Oh, 17. 17, verse 6. Yeah, the silver-haired head is a crown of glory. It is, if it is found in the way of righteousness. If it is found in the way of righteousness. The silver-haired head is a crown of glory. If. Turn to Leviticus chapter 19. You can find that. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Chapter 19. Leviticus 19, verse 21. I'm sorry, 31. I said 21, 31. Yeah, it's really 32. I was close, wasn't I? Leviticus 19:32. Mine says, you shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man and fear your God. I am the Lord. It's just an interesting connection there between, mine says, you shall rise before the gray-headed, or you shall honor the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man and fear your Lord, for I am the Lord, right? Fear your God. I am the Lord. Fear your God. I am. So there's this, all right. So that's the first thing. Now go back to Proverbs chapter 4, because there's an important connection here we got to make. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 9. Here we were talking about wisdom in chapter 4. By the way, those passages about not following the wicked begin in verse 14. That's not what we're doing right now. Chapter 4, verse 9. We're talking about wisdom. It says, she, wisdom, shall place on your head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory she will deliver to you. So now go back to chapter 16, right? The silver-haired head is a crown of glory if it is found in the way of righteousness. So the if is a pretty important if there, right? It really is just saying, if you want to have the crown of glory of the silver-haired head, it's got to be connected to righteousness. It's got to be connected to how you're following the Lord. We're going to come back to that, but make sure you see that connection, because then he goes on in verses 32 and following to really talk about what is righteousness. And he starts off in verse 32. It says, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes the city. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, right? So he's saying, what is righteousness? One of the things is slow to anger, rules his spirit, right? We've talked about the gap before, right? God providing a way out. He rules the spirit. He has self-control. He has patience. So the way of the righteous includes slow to anger, ruling your spirit, in having self-control, having the spirit control you, even more than self-control, having the spirit control you. Verse 33, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord, right? Every decision, every turn in your road, everything that has happened to you in your life is a decision is from the Lord. Let me say it again. Everything that has happened to you, everything, every decision, in other words, everything that has occurred in your life is from the Lord. You may be feeling like it's a lot that is cast, that it's a stone, that it's a roll of the dice, but it's God's decision. He's in control. Every decision is from the Lord. Everything that's happened to you is from the Lord. All right, verse 17. You didn't get that one, but maybe it'll come in later. Verse 17, verse 1. Better is a dry morsel with quietness than a house full of feasting with strife, right? Nothing is better than peace in the home, peace in the family, peace with good friends, not money, not experiences, not anything is better than peace, is better than a peaceful relationship, I think is what it's very clearly saying. Verse 2, again, he's trying to give you an idea of what righteousness is, right? And this idea of peace in the home is part of righteousness. Verse 2, a wise servant will rule over a son who causes shame and will share an inheritance among the brothers. What's interesting here is I think he's really addressing Israel here, right? He's saying the son who causes shame is Israel. The wise servant is the follower, of the principles or the follower of Christ. You could say the Gentiles, right? The wise servant will rule over the son who causes shame, because we know that in the end times, those who are followers of Christ will rule over all of those who are not followers, and will share an inheritance among the brothers, right? The wise servant will share an inheritance among those who are wise followers, and not the son who causes shame. Verse 3 and following are kind of are connected. The refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the heart. The Lord tests the heart, right? It is he who tests the heart, not us, not you, oh, really wise person that you are. It's the Lord who actually tests the heart and knows who's right and who's wrong. And so he goes into the details of that in verse 4. An evildoer gives heeds to false lips. A liar listens eagerly to a spiteful tongue. So in the Lord's testing, he very much can tell the difference between an evildoer, someone who has false lips, and a liar, someone who has a spiteful tongue, right? He when he tests, he can see those differences. And then verse 5, he who mocks the poor reproaches his maker. He who is laid at calamity will not go unpunished. The mocking of the poor, glad at calamity, right? Those are a reproach to God. Why? Again, we've said this before, because God made all of those people. And when you start mocking people, you're mocking God who has made them. Yes, they may have problems. Yes, they may have things they have to deal with. Yes, they may have issues, but God has made those people, and mocking them and not trying to help them and not trying to reach out to them is not, that's a reproach to God. That's smacking God in the face for someone that he has made. He who is glad at the calamity of others will not go unpunished, right? And this sometimes it's what's the word? Insidious? Is that a word? We think of this one as, oh yeah, I'm laughing at somebody because they're in a bad place. No, it's that I'm really a little bit happy that that happened to him. Right? That person who I don't like and then fell into trouble. Yeah, I kind of got a little bit of happiness on my side that that's happened to him. That's finally, God has punished him in some way. I'm really happy about that. And God's saying here, no. If you're glad at someone else's calamity, if you're glad that someone else is being punished, that you will not go unpunished for that. Again, you're mocking, you're reproaching the maker when you do that. All right, so excuse me. So finally, he wraps up this section in verse 6. And it says, children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children is their father. Children's children are the crown of old men. So let's go back then to verse 31, right? The silver-haired head is a crown of glory if it is found in the way of righteousness. Children's children are the crown of old men, right? He's saying here that your glory is your children, and you got to take that word children in the broadest sense, because we've been talking about it back in verse 20 through 24 in the broadest sense, right? Those who you teach, those who you bring pleasant words to, those who you are a wellspring of life to, those children of yours, those who are your followers, those who listen to you, those who think of you as insightful, that's your crown. That's the glory that you have now and the glory that you will have in heaven when those children rise up and say, wow, that person had a real impact on my life. That person really helped me when I was going through a tough road. That person didn't mock me when I was poor. That person didn't beat me up when I was going through calamity, right? It's not just that you get silver hair. It's that you, if it is found in the way of righteousness, and righteousness is slow to anger, right? Righteousness ruling his spirit, and then righteousness is following after the principles. So what I've got to say to you guys, and some of you will not like this, is that not only are you elite Christians, right? You've been given insight, learning, wisdom to help others, to bring them to life. And your crown as elite Christians will be those that you have touched. That's your crown. And therefore, all of you are silver-haired, not just Curtis. All of you are old men, are old women. And by that, I mean the best of things, right? I think that particularly here, he's saying in these verses, this time in your life is a time of authority. It's a time of dignity. It's a time of inheritance giving, right? A time of wisdom sharing, a time that you have learned so much and enough that you are to bring life to others, and therefore get the crown of old men, get the joy and the blessing and the dignity and the authority from those that you have touched, those you have reached out to, those you have helped. It's really only 9:32 because I'm done. I could
It's gotta be a mistake or something.
I could teach more, but I would just have to make it up on the fly because I haven't studied past verse 6. So let me go back and give you the summary at least for chapter 16. And I know that some of it we did last week, but y'all have awesome memories. The first part, and you remember from verse 1 to verse 9, the summary is God has the final word, right? God has the final word, not you, not Satan. God has the final word. Verse 9 is the great summary. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Then if you go all the way back to verse 3, the second bullet is, therefore, commit your plans to God and back off, right? Commit your works to the Lord and your thoughts will be established. Commit your plans to God and back off. And the third thing that we started off with in really verses 20 through 24, right? If you follow the principles and therefore are wise, you will be happy, you will be seen as insightful, you will learn, and you will bring life to others. That's powerful stuff right there, right? If you follow the principles and are wise, you'll be happy, you'll be seen as insightful, you will learn, you'll continue to learn, and you'll bring life to others. The third bullet kind of snuck in there in verses 25 through 30, right? If you're just worried about your mouth, the end of that is death. If you're just worried about yourself, if you're just worried about your stuff, right? The end of that is death. There's no honor there. Then finally, what I've been harping on maybe most strongly, right? You are elite, silver-haired Christians. You've been given insight, learning, wisdom, and now it's time for you to help others to learn and to bring them life. And your crown, your blessing, your joy will be from those that you've touched, those that you've helped, those that you've moved along. Okay, that's all I got. Any other thoughts? We could have a 2-hour prayer time. Any other thoughts? Seriously. Good. All right, we'll move to prayer.
You pack a lot of few words, and it takes a lot to pull all that out.
Yeah. And you know, as I've said many times as we've gone through this, God is the one who's teaching you. Not I'm saying some things, blah, 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 blah. But God is the one who's reaching your heart and going, listen to that statement. Listen to that word. Listen to what is said in Proverbs there, right? So I just ask you to please always be listening to what God is saying to you. I had somebody from the other class send me an email after it and said, boy, I really hope everybody understood what you said in this particular verse, right? And my guess is that was something just for him, right? That God wanted him to get. And so I just, it's so important to me that you really listen to God as we go through this, because otherwise it's just blah, 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 and then more blah, 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 blah. I can pull out some things that hit me, but it's much more important for things that hit you. If you're listening to God, if you're paying attention to what he's saying. So yes to what Rick said. All right, anything else? All right, let's move into prayer time. Hugh, you gonna be okay leading the prayer from there?
Yeah, if everybody can hear me okay.
Okay, good.
Stop the
Right, so
recording.
stop the recording. Thank
And
you.
I'll just need people to speak up who's talking so I know who to write down with the request.